How does non-consummation lead to annulment? Imagine getting married and realizing that the marriage never truly felt complete. Sometimes, the reason is more serious than just a lack of opportunity. In family law, non-consummation can be a reason to seek annulment instead of divorce. When a marriage is not consummated, it means the spouses have not engaged in sexual intercourse after tying the knot. This can happen for many reasons, but often it's due to a physical inability to perform, like impotence or a permanent health issue. To get an annulment based on non-consummation, certain conditions must be met. First, one spouse must have been unable to consummate the marriage at the time of the wedding. This means they could not physically engage in sexual intercourse. Second, the other spouse must have been unaware of this inability when they agreed to marry. If they knew about the incapacity beforehand, it might not be grounds for annulment. Third, the inability must be permanent and not something that can be fixed. If it's a temporary issue, annulment usually isn't an option. Another important point is that the spouse seeking annulment must not have voluntarily cohabited with the other after discovering the inability. If they lived together or acted as a married couple despite knowing, it could weaken their case. Usually, family law considers non-consummation alone as insufficient unless it involves a permanent, undisclosed physical problem. For example, if a couple never had sex because they lived apart or were waiting, that's often seen as a matter for divorce, not annulment. Time limits also play a role. The spouse must act within a certain period after discovering the inability, often within 1 year. This helps ensure the process is timely and fair. Essentially, non-consummation leads to annulment when it reveals a fundamental flaw in the marriage contract, like concealed impotence, that prevents the marriage from being legally complete. The law views consummation as a key part of marriage, and if it can't happen due to a permanent physical issue, the marriage might be considered never fully valid. So, in simple terms, if one partner cannot physically engage in sex forever, and they didn't hide this fact, they might be able to get an annulment. Acting quickly after discovering the problem is important because waiting too long can affect the case. If the inability is temporary or was known from the start, then annulment is usually not the route taken. Instead, couples might go through divorce if they decide to part ways.